Welcome to the debate. Imagine for a second that you wake up in a cramped bathroom stall,
Okay, yeah, that sounds terrible already.
right? The fluorescent light is flickering. You look down and you're wearing a suit you literally do not remember buying.
And you've got a lanyard around your neck, right, with some corporate logo you don't even recognize.
Exactly. Bearing a job title you don't understand at all, and you walk out onto the 14th floor of this totally unfamiliar glass high-rise, only to slowly realize that you have been coming to this exact building, sitting at a desk and working for the last year, and you don't have a single memory of it.
It honestly sounds like a psychological thriller, but it is actually the lived reality of the material we're diving into today. You wake up, and a year of your life has simply vanished into the ether.
Yeah, 1,600 hours of your conscious existence just gone.
Which is terrifying.
It is. But, the most incredible part? You signed up for it willingly. So today, we're examining the absolute cultural dominance of Aston Medical's Hypnotic Touch.
The little disc.
Yeah, this piece of technology is no bigger than a fingernail. It just adheres to the soft hollow of your neck right below the ear, and it gently hijacks the nervous system to induce a waking trance.
Well, it was originally rolled out as this pragmatic way to sleepwalk through the misery of the morning commute. But inevitably, it has become the universal tool to just, skip the entire workday.
Right, and we are anchoring this discussion in a first-hand account of someone who experienced a rare firmware glitch.
Yeah, they surfaced. I think that was their word, right? Surfaced.
Yes, they surfaced in the middle of an unremembered shift, completely surrounded by dozens of unconscious, trance state colleagues.
Which brings us to the core question of our discussion today. Does the hypnotic touch represent a pragmatic triumph that frees humans from mundane drudgery and unlocks unprecedented economic prosperity?
Or is it a coercive mechanism that tricks individuals into surrendering the vast majority of their conscious existence?
Exactly.
Well, I'll be taking the position that this technology provides an optimal, perfectly rational trade-off, where we sacrifice the tedious parts of the day for higher wages, physical safety, and a demonstrably better quality of conscious life.
And I take the opposite view. I'll argue that this technology is systemically coercive, stripping people of their autonomy and fundamentally eroding the definition of human life, down to merely the bits in between.
Let's just get right into it, because I will admit, when I first read about that glitch, the bathroom stall moment, I shuddered. Oh, of course, it's an existential nightmare.
It is viscerally terrifying to imagine losing your continuity of self. But if we step back from that emotional reaction for a second and look at the mechanics of the hypnotic touch when it is functioning correctly, the empirical benefits are staggering.
Staggering how, exactly?
We're talking about fundamentally re-engineering societal friction. I'm talking about flattening cortisol levels, reducing the baseline stress that literally kills people a decade early.
But friction is a required component of living. You're talking about flattening the human experience entirely.
I really don't think I am. Look at the public safety outcomes alone. When people put this disc on, the ego shuts down. The fight-or-flight response just turns off, and they operate purely on spatial awareness and task execution.
Right. They become automatons. But insurance claims have plummeted across the board. In a trance state, individuals simply walk around obstacles. They don't get road rage. They don't engage in petty street arguments. As the material says, they become ghosts on the pavement.
Ghosts on the pavement. Listen to that phrase. You are literally celebrating the fact that our streets are now filled with biological automatons.
Well, ghosts don't get into fistfights?
That alone is a massive net positive for any densely populated city.
Yes, they don't get into fights, but they also don't help a lost child. They don't smile at a stranger. They don't engage in any of the spontaneous community micro-interactions that actually make a city a civilization.
That's a bit dramatic, don't you think?
Not at all. You are trading basic humanity for a lower insurance premium.
I'm not just trading it for insurance premiums, though. I'm trading it for a profoundly empowering financial reality for the working class. Let's look at the mechanism of how this is actually changing lives.
Okay, let's look at it.
We saw job listings start to offer an 18% salary banding increase for hypnotic preferred candidates. And then it jumped to 22%.
Right, because the company gets more out of them.
Exactly. Because an unconscious worker doesn't doom scroll, they don't take extended coffee breaks to complain about management, they don't let an argument with their spouse bleed into their spreadsheet accuracy, the company gets pure output, and the worker gets a massive premium on their time.
And you don't see the trap in that, like, at all?
I see tangible results. Mortgages are actually getting paid, refrigerators are full. In the source material, we have a clear example of someone whose nephew is attending a school their sister could never have afforded on her, quote, remembered salary.
But at what cost?
If your boss offered you a 22% raise right now to erase your memory of a crushing, miserable Tuesday of data entry, wouldn't you take it? It is a choice to maximize the joy of your conscious leisure hours.
I hear the financial metrics, I really do, but you are looking at this through an incredibly narrow short-term lens.
How so?
Because the perspective I draw focuses entirely on the systematic erosion of agency. You keep using the word choice, but the economic choice is a complete illusion.
An illusion? People are choosing to buy the discs.
Yes, in year one, an 18% raise is a choice. It's a bonus for the bold. But how does capitalism actually work? Once 60% of the labor pool is operating at 150% efficiency because they are literally unconscious machines, the market adjusts.
Adjusts how exactly? They are still taking home more money.
But the baseline cost of living adjusts to the new normal. That 22% banding increase stops being a preference and starts being the fundamental requirement just to make rent.
I mean, we've always had to adapt to new workplace tools.
This isn't just a tool. You can't compete for a job if you insist on being awake. When capital dictates that you must be unconscious to be competitive, the coercion of a bank balance forces people to surrender most of their waking life.
That is a very bleak view of it.
It's the reality. We arrive home to 2 hours of television and a sleep cycle, and we have the audacity to call those few hours our existence.
I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective. You were framing this as if capital imposed a cruel top-down mandate.
Because it did.
No, not at all. You're imagining a bunch of executives in a smoky room forcing the working class to plug into the matrix, but the reality is far more uncomfortable. We didn't have to be pushed. We pushed ourselves.
We pushed ourselves because the alternative was poverty.
We pushed ourselves because rational actors maximize utility. If you were a commuter facing a sweltering, packed train carriage in the dead of August, and you know you're traveling to a job where your boss is going to yell at you for 8 hours.
Which is a labor rights issue, by the way.
Maybe, but in the moment, why would you actively choose to experience that suffering? As the author notes, why would you take less money to remember a day you didn't want to remember anyway? It is a perfectly logical self-protective mechanism.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that. Let me tell you why. The idea that we push ourselves doesn't absolve the systemic coercion. It just illustrates how insidious this whole thing is.
Insidious? That's a strong word for avoiding a bad commute.
It preys on our very natural biological aversion to discomfort. Of course, an individual will choose to skip a terrible commute today, but you have to look at the macro-level effect here.
Which is what exactly? Economic stability?
No, the macro effect is that the window in which we still have a choice is closing rapidly. You are celebrating a temporary optimization while completely ignoring the jaws of the trap snapping shut. Very soon, living will be redefined exclusively as the rewarded parts of the day.
I have to admit, I really struggle with this romanticization of the daily grind. We speak about the friction of the workday as if it's this sacred crucible of human development.
It's not a crucible, it's just reality.
But let's really consider what people are escaping here. Think of the hypnotic touch like medical anesthesia.
Oh, come on.
Hear me out. If you need to have a brutal surgical procedure, you don't demand to stay awake and feel the scalpel just to prove you are alive.
That is a completely different scenario.
Is it? We accept the loss of consciousness because the experience of that specific pain serves zero utility to our personal growth. So why on earth should we romanticize the drudgery of hostile office politics or a packed transit system?
That is a fascinating analogy, but it completely falls apart when you look at the mechanism of anesthesia. Anesthesia paralyzes the body to protect the mind from trauma.
Right.
But the hypnotic touch paralyzes the mind to exploit the body.
But the mind is protected. The worker wakes up on their sofa totally fresh without the mental exhaustion of an 8-hour shift.
An office is not an operating theater. A surgery takes, 2 hours? We are talking about 1,600 hours of a human life per year.
Time that they were going to spend being miserable anyway.
This isn't a brief medical intervention. This is the vast majority of your adult existence. Let's look closely at the reality of the 14th floor during that glitch. This is where your anesthesia metaphor becomes an absolute nightmare.
You mean the reality of dozens of people working peacefully and efficiently?
I mean the reality of dozens of human beings in a room completely dead to the world and to each other. When the individual woke up in that cubicle and walked out onto the floor, they wandered around for 40 minutes looking for a single conscious face.
Well, yes, it was a working floor.
They waved at a woman typing. Zero response. They literally said "excuse me" to a man carrying folders, and the man simply stepped around them the way you step around a bin bag on the pavement.
The spatial awareness protocols were functioning as intended.
A bin bag. That is how we treat a conscious human being in this new paradigm. This isn't peace. This is the absolute death of human connection, subsidized by corporate efficiency.
But you are analyzing the 14th floor from the perspective of someone whose disk had critically malfunctioned.
They woke up.
Exactly. They woke up when they weren't supposed to. To the people in the trance, there is no isolation. They aren't suffering. They're simply bypassing the friction.
Bypassing their own lives.
And this brings up a crucial point about how we view technological progress. The people who object to this technology in the text are routinely dismissed as Luddites or romantics who would rather suffer than thrive. And honestly, I think that criticism holds a lot of weight.
It is not sentimentality or Luddism to want to possess your own memories. It is the baseline requirement for having an identity.
But memory is an absolute burden when it is entirely filled with anxiety, exhaustion, and repetitive stress. The brilliance of the hypnotic touch isn't just what it does at the office.
Then what is it?
It's what it prevents from coming home. Think about it. How many marriages suffer because someone brings the stress of a morning argument with their boss into the living room?
So we just delete the workday instead of fixing the workplace?
The technology cleanly excises the transactional part of the day. You press the button on your neck, and suddenly you are home. You are kicking off your shoes, the kettle is already boiling, you have 100% of your mental energy available for your children, your partner, your actual life.
I understand the appeal. I really do.
Right, it's undeniable.
The creators of this device likely just wanted to ease the pain of the modern commute. It started as a kindness, but you are ignoring the slippery slope of human behavioral psychology.
I don't think it's a slippery slope to want to be happy.
The creator's intentions do not matter once the market and human nature take hold of the mechanism. If you give a human being a button to skip the boring parts of life, they will not just skip the commute. They will eventually skip everything that isn't a high dopamine reward.
Is that genuinely a bad thing, though?
Yes.
If we have the technological capability to maximize reward and minimize suffering, isn't that the foundational pursuit of human civilization? From the invention of the wheel to indoor plumbing, we have always built tools to skip the hard parts.
Yes, it is a bad thing because of what it fundamentally does to our definition of life. Life is not just a highlight reel of rewards.
It could be.
It shouldn't be. We have quietly, collectively rewritten the word living to mean only the bits in between. But what happens to serendipity? What happens to the chance encounters?
People don't want chance encounters at 7 a.m. on a Tuesday.
What about the idle daydreaming while looking out the window of a train? The random thought that pops into your head on a Tuesday morning while you are bored out of your mind. That boredom is where creativity lives.
I think you're romanticizing boredom.
The friction of existence is what gives the self its shape. The hours were always ours, and we are eagerly handing them over to a corporate logo we don't even recognize.
But we are trading those hours for profound security. Nobody is holding a gun to anyone's head. We are doing it ourselves, every single morning.
I really have to push back on that.
There is a profound agency in looking at a difficult, exhausting, economically hostile world and pressing a button to fast forward to the safety of your own living room.
Let me stop you right there. You keep saying we are doing it ourselves, but you are completely glossing over the most chilling part of the entire account. The reaction of the friend.
The friend who told them to get the firmware updated?
Yes. Let's unpack that interaction because it is the linchpin of the whole dystopia.
Okay, let's unpack it.
The individual confesses to their friend, someone they describe as the smartest person they know, by the way, that they woke up in a strange building, completely alienated from their own body, possessing a lanyard for a company they've never heard of.
Right, a very jarring experience.
It is an existential horror story. And what does the friend do? She laughs. She asks if they had the disk serviced recently. Her only concern was whether the firmware was up to date.
Which, from my perspective, proves my point entirely.
How could that possibly prove your point?
Because the friend recognizes that the glitch is merely a technical failing of a lower-grade disk. It's just an engineering problem. It is not a philosophical failure of the hypnotic touch as a concept. It just means the device needs servicing the exact same way you'd service a car whose brakes feel a bit spongy.
No, it proves that the normalization of this deep, profound alienation is entirely complete.
I disagree.
The smartest person this individual knows doesn't even see the shape of the nightmare anymore. Why? Because the nightmare is now the room we are all standing in. We have normalized the idea that you can be a ghost haunting your own life.
A very well-paid ghost.
And as long as the paycheck clears, nobody finds it disturbing. The individual has an email waiting for them asking why their productivity flagged on Tuesday, and they literally cannot answer it because they do not know what they do for a living.
But they still get the paycheck.
You say we are trading hours for security. I say we are trading consciousness for mere survival.
Look, I hear the weight of what you're saying, but I think we really have to look closely at the alternative. In the material, there is a moment where the individual says they are keeping the disk off for now.
Yes, a moment of clarity.
They want to see their commute tomorrow. They want to look at the faces on the train. They want to, quote, remember a Wednesday.
And they should. It is their Wednesday.
It's a beautifully poetic sentiment, sure, but let's be brutally honest about what they are actually going to see.
They are going to see their life.
They are going to see a packed, sweaty, miserable train carriage. They are going to experience 8 agonizing hours of data entry under fluorescent lights. They are going to feel the physical ache of exhaustion in their lower back.
That's part of being human.
The poetry of remembering a Wednesday fades incredibly fast when the reality of that Wednesday is objectively miserable.
But it belongs to them. The frustration, the sweat on the train, the idle daydreaming at the desk, that is the very texture of human existence.
I just don't think suffering is a requirement for existence.
When you surgically erase the friction, you erase the person. You just become a biological server rack executing a script for a corporation.
A biological server rack whose family is fed, whose children are housed, and who is educated without the generational trauma of poverty.
Wow.
That is the crux of my argument. The hypnotic touch, despite the very real shock of a firmware glitch, is a revolutionary tool for economic liberation. It solves the psychological toll of modern labor.
By deleting the mind from the equation entirely.
Historically, the working class has always had to sacrifice their physical bodies and their mental well-being to the factory floor or the spreadsheet. This technology isolates the labor exclusively to the body, leaving the mind entirely untouched, free to experience only the rewards of that labor.
And, well, my summary leads to the exact opposite conclusion. The financial gains, the 18%, the 22%, the paid mortgages, they are a Trojan horse.
A Trojan horse?
Yes. They are bought at the completely unacceptable cost of consciousness itself. This is a system that preys on our biological aversion to discomfort, slowly boiling the frog until we have surrendered a year of our lives to the void.
I mean, we'll have to agree to disagree on that.
It turns human beings into temporary ghosts, stepping around each other like bin bags on the pavement, completely devoid of empathy, presence, or connection.
You know, it is genuinely fascinating how the exact same source material, like the exact same events, can yield such deeply contrasting philosophies.
It really is.
However, as heated as this gets, I think we both find strong points of convergence in the history of the device itself. We both agree that Aston Medical's initial intention was likely a genuine kindness.
Yes.
The idea of easing the modern commute, of giving people back their peace of mind during transit, was a brilliant and empathetic innovation.
We definitely agree on that. The tragedy isn't in the invention. The tragedy is in the application. We also agree on the mechanism of its spread.
Right, the creep of it.
The rapid expansion of this technology, starting with just the train ride, then creeping into the morning meeting, then through lunch, and finally consuming the entire afternoon. It was driven by an undeniable combination of corporate productivity metrics and human nature.
Because we naturally seek the path of least resistance.
Exactly. We pushed ourselves.
It's an uncomfortable mirror held up to what we actually value when the chips are down and the alarm clock rings at 6 in the morning.
And that brings us to the final plea in the material, which I think serves as the perfect closing thought for today.
Go for it.
The account asks us to consider, just for a moment, what we are actually buying when we press that button on the side of our necks. We focus so heavily on what we are escaping, the traffic, the difficult boss, the sheer boredom.
Yeah, the friction.
But we rarely stop to ask ourselves what we are handing over in exchange.
Because the hours are yours. Or, well, at least they used to be. It is a profound question about the fundamental value of our own time.
Are the bits in between actually the substance of a life?
Or are they just the static we have to endure to get to the good parts?
We highly encourage you to reflect on this firsthand account. Consider the mechanics of your own day.
Think about the friction you wish you could skip.
And ask yourself, honestly, what would you do if someone handed you the disc? Would you keep the disc off and bear the weight of remembering a Wednesday, or would you take the upgrade? It is a question that only becomes more urgent as the technology marches forward.
We will leave that for you to decide. Thank you for joining us for this rigorous exploration of the hypnotic touch, and we look forward to exploring more complex perspectives with you next time.
That's a wrap on today's chapter. We hope you enjoyed settling in with us over your lunch break. New chapters drop twice a week right here on the New Atlantis Inc., so make sure you're subscribed and hit the notification bell so you never miss what happens next. This story is also available on Amazon in hardback, paperback, and Kindle editions. Thanks for being here. We'll see you at our next lunchtime listening, and keep on reading.